Well, Rob, I am still in a snack-free zone. I have not been buying fun snacks. Part of that is trying to eat more healthy. Part of that is just lack of opportunity. Haven't seen anything interesting in the greater North Carolina area recently, but I'm hoping that I will have new snacks before too long because I'm going on a trip, and maybe there'll be some good airport snacks, or maybe there'll be some good snacks out in California. We'll see.
Well, people don't know, we're recording at a slightly different time, so I had not tried the two drinks that I'd mentioned previously. And about an hour and a half ago, I sat down with my family at the dinner table, and I said to Jess, my wife, I said, would you like to try the Pepsi Max strawberries and cream, given that I'm recording recording Ruminate later? So we...
You had a Ruminate family meal is what you had right there. You gathered your brood. You sat down in a very serious way at the dinner table, and you had a Pepsi.
Yeah. The verdict.
I love it. Everybody should do this with their families.
Absolutely, yeah. It's for my work. It's I need it.
Of course it is.
The verdict from Jess, she hated it. This is a very, very sweet drink. So, if you imagine a cream soda,
right? Yeah, those are very sweet to begin with.
It's got that kind of taste, but then they've also, of course, added strawberries and cream. So it's essentially a cream soda, but with strawberries, and it is monstrously sweet. I enjoyed mine. Now, we had a small bottle of it, like we hadn't bought a big one or anything like that, so it was fine.
Yeah.
But I definitely don't think I would want more than that. I had probably 3/4 of the bottle because Jess didn't want it. But this is far too sweet even for me. And I drink a lot of sweet drinks, but this was too much.
All right. Well, pour one out for the Pepsi Max strawberries and cream, I guess, then, huh?
Yeah, that's a thumbs down from me.
Well, strawberries and cream does not appeal to me, mainly just the name itself, because I am not a fan of things like strawberry ice cream. Mm-hmm. Not my thing at all. Don't like mint ice cream either, which is probably a controversial thing to say. But I'm more. I like chocolate and caramel, nuts in my ice cream, that kind of stuff. Not into mint or fruit flavors, really.
Fair enough. That's all right. We're all different.
Yeah. Well, we need to cover some topics, I think, today. I have come to the show with a couple things, and I know you have one too. How about I kick it off with something called the Logitech MX Creative Console? Sound good?
Oh, I mean, well, this is clearly a product for people who've really got to get some stuff done. This isn't just for anybody.
It is. It's not just for anybody. This is for people who are making time for their bujo later in the day, and they want to get their work done. So they break out the Logitech MX Creative Console, which is a 2-part peripheral for your Mac or Windows PC. It is a keypad, very much like a Stream Deck. I promise I will not say Steam Deck. A Stream Deck with a grid of 9 clear buttons that very much, you can do the same thing where you put little images behind them, so they have icons, which is what you can do with a Stream Deck too. And then it has like a left and a right button at the bottom, which lets you page between multiple sets of these 9 buttons. Now, it has a second piece, which is a big knob, which everybody loves a good knob. You give that thing a good twist, turn up the volume, turn it down. It's not a pushy knob. You know how a lot of these things have a knob that you can press, and I better not press this because I have a feeling that I'm going to do something terrible while we're recording.
Please don't do that.
To my recording, I just twirled the knob and I saw an overlay on my Mac screen that was not familiar and seemed like a bad idea to investigate further. Then there's a little roller type thing, a little bit like what you would find as like on a track wheel in a mouse. And then there are 4 other buttons that can be really assigned anything. And I got to say, I kind of like it. I mean, there are a couple of things I don't like. First of all, the 9-button grid thing has to be plugged in with USB-C because it doesn't have, it's not battery operated. You can't, it's not wireless either. My understanding is that if it had a rechargeable battery that and had the wireless connectivity, it would only last 2 to 3 hours, and that wouldn't be great. So that one plugs in. The knob, for some reason, can be wireless and runs on, I think, AAA batteries. They are a little too light, which makes them easy to shove along a desk. I prefer when these kind of devices are a little bit heavy so that they sit stationary on your desk a little better. But beyond that, the software to program them is an adaptation, an evolution of the loop deck, because the loop deck, which I've talked about ages ago on the show, was discontinued because the company was bought by Logitech, and now their software is going into these Logitech devices. Now, the hardware is not as nice as the loop deck hardware, which I actually am still using, but it gets the job done, and I think overall I prefer it to the Stream Deck. The thing that always bothers me about the Stream Deck is I always think it looks a little cheap and plasticky, especially because they have very concave buttons that distort the images under them. And that's partly so you can use it more by touch, but I just don't personally like that so much. What I'm using it for, which is what I really want to kind of talk about, is, first of all, I think one thing that's good when you get one of these devices is to not go crazy and set up all the buttons all at once, because you'll set up a bunch of things that you'll never use. I've been there and I've done that. So what I do instead, and I kind of like the constraint of these 9 buttons, because, you know, nine per page at a time, because that's not really that many. And so I have to be a little bit thoughtful about what I use and what I put on there. And so I have over time created 9 buttons that the top row simply takes the active window and moves it to the left side, the full screen, or the right side of my screen. The next row activates pop clip, which there are circumstances where the pop clip pop-up has disappeared, where it's handy to have it pop back up, and that's just, you know, using a keyboard shortcut. Then I have what is the name of the app? That Mic Drop. I have a Mic Drop mute switch right in the middle, which I use on shows like this for if I have to cough or something. Then I have a button that activates the big browser window for an app called PastePal, which is a clipboard manager on the Mac. And one of the things that I do is I have shortcuts that, like, if it's called Fetch Podcast Metadata. So I can run that shortcut from like Raycast, and it'll give me the option of a bunch of shows on Mac Stories. And I can select Ruminate, and it will automatically generate for me the Apple Podcasts URL, the YouTube URL, and then like an iframe for the audio player, and a bunch of other metadata that I can use in various things that I have to write each week. I use it for other things too, but it's nice to have it. That's the button I use to kind of get at that stuff quickly. Then I have a drop over button, which just takes the currently selected file and puts it in drop over, the little temporary shelf utility for the Mac.
Yep.
Then I have another one that we're on the bottom row now that creates a calendar event using Raycast. And then the final one just opens my downloads folder in Finder. Now, these are all very simple actions. They're all just pretty much keyboard shortcuts. No real shortcut stuff going on or fancy macros for the most part. And I think that is usually pretty good for these things. I found that keeping it simple with these button devices usually ensures that they break less often and you don't have to redo them. And I think it's the little things like that you do a ton of times during a day where buttons are kind of nice as compared to doing something like launching a shortcut from Raycast or using some other method for, you know, starting a script or something that you've got for your computer. The last thing I will mention is that in my page 2, I am experimenting with using shortcuts to launch multiple apps at once for things like podcast recording and editing, as well as accessing the folders in Forklift, which is an alternative file browser on the Mac that I use when I want a 2-pane view for editing audio or video, because it just tends to work better when I have that kind of setup. And then the final button opens both Ivory and Blue Sky at the same time, side by side on the right-hand side of my screen, because I do that a lot. I don't spend all day in social media. I pop in and out, and I mostly pop in. A lot of times I just pop in, post some stuff about Mac stories, then I pop right back out because I'm busy. So I like that I don't keep those open all the time during the day. I find them distracting. So that's kind of what I'm using it for. It's pretty simple.
I'm impressed you're checking Blue Sky for a start, because I'm not seeing a lot of...
It's pretty active.
Yeah, I guess I think I'm not following the right people. I need to put some... I think I've ended up following a lot of the same people that are just on Mastodon, so like nobody's posting anything.
Oh yeah, so that I definitely have a different crowd. I've set them up very differently. Blue Sky for me is my video game social media thing as much as anything. I mean, I do follow the other stuff, people from Mastodon and other tech stuff there too, but an awful lot of it is like I set up a list that is curated by NPC, Next Portable Console, which is secretly me just doing all the work, as you might imagine. And it's like all the video game related accounts that I could find, which is a pretty nice way. A lot of times I just spend my time in that tab and not in my following tab, because it's a good way to catch up on video game news.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, to be honest, that I'm still struggling. I think I got a list of game sites off you a while ago, and they post way too much in the RSS feed. So
it's hard.
I really should maybe use Blue Sky for something like that, because there isn't a lot of these gross brands, but there's not a lot of like news sites and things like that on Mastodon anyway to be able to catch their headlines. So maybe Blue Sky is the way to go. It is good for that, because I think you're right. Like, one of the things I have, like, all these things in my RSS for video games, and I just don't get around to them. And then at some point I look and there's like 3,000 articles, and it's too much. But if I'm scrolling through a few times a day, I'll catch the headlines from IGN and all these other ones or Nintendo Life and all the other sites that I want to see pretty easily. And I also keep some of those publications I don't follow myself. They're just in this list in a tab, so I don't have like a huge Blue Sky timeline either. Yeah, I think we're going off on a tangent here, but one of the sneaky things that tends to happen if you go pick a video game website and you subscribe to their RSS feed, what you're not seeing on the website is all the other crap that they're posting, where it's like, oh, here's the top 20 Pokemon cards that are worth the most money that just gets thrown into the RSS feed that I'm not even convinced is on the website in any prominent position, but like the RSS feed seems to just have all these extra stuff that they're trying to, push people to. I don't like to use the word clickbait, because that's literally what headlines are, but it's this like this kind of content farm type stuff where there's not really news that just gets dumped into the RSS feed on top of that.
I didn't know that. Maybe that is the case. I hadn't noticed that myself, but maybe it is. I mean, we're dancing around the big news, which is Polygon got sold. The assets got sold by Vox Media, which is super disappointing, because like 75% of their writing staff, including their editor-in-chief Chris Plant, were laid off. And I have unsubscribed from Polygon on RSS because I was just so disgusted with it. They were bought by a company, by a guy who got his start in porn websites and then runs sites like basically content farm type stuff like Screen Rant and Game Rant and a bunch of other sites that are pretty low quality, high volume sites. And it's interesting to me. My guess is that that company does not make it long term, because I think the reason Polygon probably was struggling is in part because of AI, because a lot of those kinds of articles that, you know, you and I might view them as SEO plays. They were, but they were also like, they drove a lot of traffic, like, you know, walkthroughs of video games, for instance, or top 10 lists of like the top 10 best Game Boy games ever, those kind of things.
Oh yeah.
Those attracted a lot of Google searches. And the problem is now for those sites is that those things are actually very easy and well done by AI, because there's so many. Like, instead of getting Polygon's top 10 Game Boy games, you're getting what is essentially an aggregation of the top 10 Game Boy games from probably 20 different sites. And the lists, I've tried it before. I mean, the lists are actually pretty good. And if all you really want to do is like, oh, I want to make a list of games on the Game Boy that I want to play, and you don't really care, you probably know the games already and don't need to read about them. You just want to kind of jog your memory about games that are good on the Game Boy. Using something like AI is not a bad way to do it, but it really does hurt those sites in terms of traffic. And I mean, I think Vox probably has its own problems because of like high overhead, having Manhattan offices and a lot of administrative overhead that smaller sites like Mac Stories, for instance, don't have. But it also allows them to do things that little sites like ours can't do. So there's a trade-off there, and it's sad to see Polygon go, because they also did good investigative journalism, like real journalism, and decent review, you know, good reviews, and they had videos. It was a good site overall, and I thought there were a lot of good writers over there.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, like I say, I had the RSS feed, and I would go there if it was, you know, I was looking for something specific. But
yeah, like if for instance, like when Grand Theft Auto 6 was delayed, if I'm going to read about that somewhere, I probably would have gone to Polygon to read about it, just because I knew the site was, one, less junky than a lot of the sites that were going to report on it, and they might actually put a little more context and thought into it than just, you know, 2 paragraphs with a bunch of padding about a delay to May 26th, 2026. And now there are still some good people who are still there. I don't see how they do it, though, with a staff of under 10 people.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I don't think the people that they fired must have been doing something. Like, you know, I mean, they weren't just there twiddling their thumbs. Like, you're not going to get the same coverage that they did before. And then what was the other site that went? Was it Giant Bomb? Is that shutting down as well?
Yep, Giant Bomb. Yep. So there aren't that many good quality, decent size video game websites anymore. IGN, I think, is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Eurogamer, pretty good. They got bought by somebody not too many years ago now, and I don't know if so far I think they're pretty much intact, but I don't know. It's tough, and I think it's not just a video game media thing. It's like all media, online media, is kind of in the same bind. I think that the video game press is probably worse off just because of the reliance on so much of the listicles and walkthroughs and all of that to drive traffic, which I suspect has dried up through a combination of AI and just Google search's general decline overall.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we sort of spoke about this a little bit before the show, but the reason I was thinking about this is they've given a bunch of YouTubers and people like that access to Tony Hawk 3 and 4. The remaster's coming out in July, and you know, I mean, this was kind of what we brought up before the show, but like, I think this is what we're more likely to see now, is just, you know, people who, you know, Twitch streamers and YouTube streamers, that kind of thing, are just going to get sent the games and like, that's it. We're not going to get these like in-depth reviews that we used to get all the time from these other sites.
There's a huge tension there that I don't think that people necessarily recognize always, which is like, and it's hard. I don't want to be the person who generalizes about influencer culture, but because it's easy to blame other people on like your own industry's problems, inherent problems. But there is a problem with, to a degree, of influencers. There's so much pressure to get the viral views, and that what you find is that companies are more willing to work with influencers than to talk to people in more traditional media or even the blog world, because they just send them stuff and they gush about it. And it's just really easy if you're a PR person to sprinkle out a bunch of products to people who you know are just going to say nice things and not have any kind of critical analysis than it is to actually take the risk of giving it to somebody who might be like, it's okay, or it's not good, or whatever, you know?
Yeah, and I guess as well, like if these people are, just starting out or whatever, like they don't want to give a bad review, quote unquote. I'm using that in the loosest possible terms.
Yeah, they don't want to burn the bridges because they can't afford to buy the stuff themselves. I mean, an awful lot of stuff like I review, I just buy myself. Well, people do send me stuff a lot. We talked about that too before the show. But a lot of stuff I just tell people not to send me because I can kind of tell in advance, I don't want to even bother. And, so I don't. And the other thing that happens with the influencer culture is that companies now, there's like this unspoken... It's kind of turned into advertising in a way where companies send this stuff out and they're paying people in products basically. And so like I'll talk to somebody about advertising and they'll say, "Oh, can we send you what we make?" And you just write about it. I'm like, "Well, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about editorial?" and me reviewing something, or are we talking about this is the advertising? And a lot of times they're really talking about the advertising. It's like, well, I'm sorry, but I can't pay my bills with, a keyboard. So, let's separate these two things. And it's something that I fight with all the time because I kind of am in the middle of that conversation. It's like, we can have a conversation about reviewing your products, in which case there are no promises made whatsoever about what we're going to say or how we're going to say it or running it by you or anything like that. Or if you want to just advertise in your own voice and not our voice, that's totally fine. You can pay us money. We will put your product on our website if it's something that we're okay with. And you'll pay us money and we'll, that's how we pay our bills. But those lines have gotten a lot more blurry. I mean, the other whole other can of worms with it, which is very similar and also ties into influencer culture, is the affiliate link stuff, which we do, but a lot of companies now just feel like, oh, well, we don't need to advertise because we'll just have affiliate links. And there is no way to support yourself on affiliate links. They're okay money to be like a supplement to other kinds of income, but you gotta really flog a product in a pretty unsavory way in order to get enough people to buy it to make any kind of reasonable amount of money. I mean, Amazon's probably the easiest one to make the biggest amount of money, but you still have to have a lot of traffic for that to even just to be a small amount of money. I mean, we're not talking about huge amounts of money, even from Amazon on like a monthly basis, unless you're really doing a lot of that SEO stuff and just throwing Amazon links in all kinds of weird places.
Yeah,
which we don't do.
The kind of websites that you hit when you search for what's the best, I don't know, suitcase or USB cable, and you end up on these, you end up on bestusbccables.com.
Yes, and there's be like 100 of them in a long list, and they're all Amazon links.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, thanks very much. You've basically just searched on Amazon for me. I could have done that. But yeah. Well, we got off on a tangent there a bit. Having said all that,
we did.
Having said all
I've been thinking about the media industry lately, but tell me more about Tony Hawk.
Yeah, having said all that, the Tony Hawk 3 and 4 remaster, I mean, it looks fantastic. They're using the same engine as the 1 and 2 remaster. So I've only watched about 10-15 minutes of it before we recorded, but it's looking really good. I'm very excited for this.
Maybe I should become a Twitch streamer and get Tony Hawk advanced copies.
That would be nice.
Sit on Twitch and play Tony Hawk all day.
Do you know, if I become a streamer, that is the only way I'm going to find time to play video games. If it has to be my literal job. That's the only way I'm going to find time to do it.
Well, why do you think NPC exists as a podcast? It's in part to force me to have time to make time for video games, because otherwise I was finding myself not doing it. I mean, I'm still not good enough at it as I'd like to be, which doesn't matter as much because we talk about hardware on that show. But I do want to play more games. I mean, you know what I've been playing, Rob?
Go on.
Claire Obscure Expedition 33. Have you heard of this game?
I have not. What's it called? Claire Obscure. I'm typing.
Claire Obscure.
Yeah.
Expedition 33. It's very French. It has a very French soundtrack.
Okay.
The music is beautiful. It's an RPG.
Mm-hmm.
So you are in a post-apocalyptic world, presumably France, and there is somebody named the Paintress who every year comes out and paints a number in descending order on the horizon, and the game starts at 34 and it goes down to 33. And what that means is when she paints the 33, that means anyone who has reached the age of 33 vanishes off the face of the earth. So over the course of 100 years, starting with the number 100, they're slowly wiping out, the Paintress is slowly wiping out humanity. And so what you have to do with your party is go and try to defeat the Paintress. You have to leave your little island home where you happen to be and go to the mainland and work your way through all the bosses and other enemies and try to defeat the Paintress. And I played the prologue. I played through a lot of Act 1 so far, but that's it. And it's just a really beautiful game. It's on Xbox. It's on Game Pass. So if you have Game Pass, it doesn't cost anything more than the subscription. And I've been streaming it from my Xbox using Game Pass to some of the handhelds that I use. And I know it's on GeForce Now also, but I had canceled my GeForce Now subscription, as I tend to do from time to time because it's pretty expensive.
Yeah, I'm just on the Wikipedia page while you were talking about it, and we've got Charlie Cox is here, Andy Serkis does a voice. I mean, this is fairly impressive to have those two in a video game as well.
Yeah,
this looks like a lot of fun.
It really is, and it's got the combat. I'm not super good at the combat. It's very much it requires some pretty precise timing because it's turn-based combat, and there's parrying and dodging, and I'm getting better, but I'm not great at the parrying and dodging. So I may have to. I may have to turn down the difficulty just to kind of enjoy the story, because it actually, that's the thing about it, is it's really pulled me in because the story is really good. And it was like one of those games where I put on headphones and I started playing through the prologue, and I was just like mesmerized by the cutscenes and enjoying the story and the voice acting and the music. It does a really nice job of pulling you in.
Yeah, this looks really nice. I'm just going to add it to a list of games that I want to play, but probably won't. But you never know.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, it's one of those things that, down the road, it'll probably get cheaper fairly fast. It's already on Xbox, and it's on Steam, I know. And GeForce Now.
It's on PS5 as well.
Is it? Okay, yeah. I couldn't remember if it was.
My kids will move out of the house eventually, right? I'll have time at some point.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'm not sure if I would have played it had I not had a Game Pass subscription, only because I feel like I've spent a lot of money on games recently that I've not really played very much, and I was thinking I would just go do backlog stuff until the Switch 2 comes out. But this one got a lot of good press, looked really nice, and I thought, I'll give it a try since it doesn't cost anything more, and it's kind of pulled me in. And I think I will continue to play it until at least the Switch 2 comes out.
Very nice. Very nice, yeah. This does look really good. So
yeah, that's probably a good place to stop for the day, don't you think?
Yeah, I think we did. We did a nice. I think we weren't intending to talk about video games quite that much, but that was a nice little surprise. No, it's just
I'm surprised I hadn't thought to talk about Clair Obscur until now. I haven't talked about it much of anywhere, other than I mentioned on NPC that I've been streaming it from a hardware standpoint. Here's my pick as we leave the episode for today is if you like streaming from your Xbox, you can do this remotely. I've mostly done it just at home on my local network, but there's an app called XB Play, the letters XB for Xbox Play, which is, I believe it's on iOS. It's also on Android. I've been using Android handhelds, and it's got a subscription, or you can pay like a one-time fee, $10 on. That's at least what it costs on the Google Play Store, and it does a much better job at streaming at a high quality without any like frame rate drops or anything like that. And has a bunch of ways you can tweak it to make it look even better too. So very good for streaming off your Xbox to other devices in your home.
Nice. Yeah, I've just found the website, so we'll make sure that's in the show notes as well.
Yeah. All right. Cool. All right.
Speak to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.